All right, back again on the Fantasy Football Podcast. I know it's been probably about a year since the last one, considering I think I've maybe have done these once a year for the last 2 or 3 years. But that's what happens when you got two kids, and I guess I can't really use the excuse of being busy at my job this year because I've had essentially 9 months of house arrest, and where I could have done more podcasts, but I just didn't. So deal with it. To make up for the lack of content, this episode should be pretty jam packed. We've got I'll do a quick run through the power rankings with some predictions for the year in there, and then a longer form expose on a league topic, and then also we'll be joined by league member Andrew Smith. And then we'll close things out with the mailbag. So a lot going on. So let's get into it. So from a power ranking standpoint, as always, we'll start at the back and work our way towards the top. Number 12, coworker Dan. He's got one win in his last 17 matchups, and I'd say he's definitely the odds-on favorite to be clown right now, two-time clown. He trails the next two teams ahead of him in the standings by 2 wins, and the best player on his team might be Wayne Gallman. So I would recommend Dan start scouting week 17. Number 11, Billy. Despite having 2 more wins than Dan, Billy really is making a strong argument for the worst team in the league. His management in heavy quotations, it's been akin to Donald Trump's management style during the COVID pandemic, which was basically distract, deflect, and then defecate. Number 10, Bootsy. While his team might be a cut slightly above Dan and Billy, he's tied with Billy in the standings, and he only recently overtook Dan the last couple of weeks. Bootsy lost all credibility earlier in the year when he gave away Derrick Henry to Oaks for what was essentially a ham sandwich, and he really needs Billy and Dan to continue to suck, basically, to keep him out of the Clown Bowl. Number 9 is Schaefer. Schaefer has a really mediocre team. He's got a couple of stars. He's 4 wins clear of the bottom, so he shouldn't be too nervous. He's not mathematically eliminated from the clown race quite yet, but he will be when he beats Bootsy and Dan in week 17. So that's kind of your bottom of the pack. Sort of by nature of the dumb divisional alignment, Kraus and I actually are the only 2 teams that are basically both eliminated from clown contention as well as eliminated from making the playoffs. We're both more than 6 wins up on the Clown Bowl teams. We're several hundred points behind the potential wildcard team, so we're kind of in no man's land. I thought about doing a tie here, and this might be controversial, but frankly, I put Kraus 8th and I put myself 7th. He has 1 more win than me in the standings, but he's only scored 38 more points, so we're pretty even. I put Kraus here really because of the makeup of our teams. I think Kraus really only has one kind of reliable fantasy stud in DK Metcalf, and the rest of his team is held together with glue and duct tape, and he's one David Montgomery ACL injury away from me passing him in the standings. Number 7, myself. Meanwhile, on my team, I have Pat Mahomes, who might be the most valuable player in all of fantasy, as well as Justin Jefferson, who has turned into a reliable stud the last couple weeks. And I can't really get through this with a straight face. My team is pretty much just as ramshackle and mixed up and mediocre as Krause's. So, and actually, as I was digging into research for this, he's 4-1 versus me on the season. So let's just call it a tie for 7th. All right, number 6, Ariel. Ariel is the living embodiment as to why our divisions need to be realigned. Him and Carlson, I guess to a lesser extent, but Ariel really kind of brings the point home. His team is garbage. He stinks, and he's been coasting on Justin Herbert's big weeks. He's had to suffer the pain of having Zeke Elliott and Kenyon Drake. You never know what you're going to get. And he just lost Will Fuller for the year. So I'd say Ariel is technically still alive in his division, but he won't be for much longer. Number 5, Ben. Ben, it feels like decades of irrelevance, but Ben has actually put together a respectable season. He, even more impressive actually, is that he's done it with Carson Wentz and Daniel Jones as his quarterbacks, which is wild. Ben has rocketed up the standings by winning his last 6 games, but as he's now dealing with some injuries, and he plays Carlson this week, and as well as Denenberg and Oaks down the stretch, should probably enjoy it while it lasts. He does have a chance if he keeps scoring total points, but frankly, I think more attention needs to be paid to the number 4 team, which is Smith. Smith will be coming up here joining us in a couple minutes, but he currently leads the LBP plus Smith division in wins. He's got a one win lead over Oaks. I actually see him as the strongest contender for the wild card. I think Oaks is strong and getting stronger, and he's picking up speed. Smith, he's got a pretty ugly quarterback situation. Didn't help this week losing Lamar Jackson, but he's getting Austin Eckler back at the right time, and he just got Chris Carson back, so his team is definitely rounding into form. He needs to score as many points as possible, really really. Obviously, that goes without saying. He currently trails Denenberg by 20 total points, but it does look like Deberg is probably going to win his division. So I'd say Smith is in pretty good shape to fight off Ben there for the wild card spot. Denenberg, number 3, he's had a strong year, and for some reason he's been unable to separate himself from Ben in the win column, as he only leads by 1 win, but he is 4-1 versus Ben this year, so he's got the edge in head-to-head. Denenberg, he's got a pretty light schedule down the matchup, and he actually has one more matchup with Ben, so he kind of has a chance to bury him for the division. Number 2, Andrew Oakes, due in part to good drafting and keepers, as well as due in part to some highway robbery trades. Oakes, I think, has the strongest roster he's had in years. Josh Allen has kind of powered through a mid-year slump. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has held off the Le'Veon Bell threat to his workload, and Travis Kelce is pretty much the most unfair competitive advantage since playing his odd job in GoldenEye on N64. Oakes trails Smith by 1 win for the division, and he's won 12 of his last 15, and really looks to be heating up. Derrick Henry tends to finish the season very strongly. So even if Oakes fails to take the division, he has a dramatic points lead. So Oakes is essentially locked into the playoffs, whether it's division or wild card. The only team, of course, that he doesn't have a dramatic points lead over is our number 1 team, John Carlson. Wow, what a season it's been for Johnny. It's undeniable. He's the number 1 team in the league. He's won more games. He's scored more points than anyone. His team is fantastic at multiple positions, and he's worthy of the top spot this year for sure. But I did want to zoom out a little bit and get into the sort of primary theme for today's podcast, and that's Carlson's place in history. So a few weeks ago, Carlson wrote something on the league GroupMe that really caught my attention. He claimed, in addition to wanting to levy as many fines as possible, despite no actual power to do so, that he was going to get all the records this year, namely most wins, highest single season points ever, and most weekly high points wins ever. It's quite a claim. It might have seemed like it was just braggadocio to Carlson, but for someone such as myself who takes this league's history and records very seriously, considering I own several of them, I really wanted to test the veracity of this claim and see what John's chances really are of taking all the league records and being recognized as the best team in clown history. Starting with wins, wins can be a little bizarre sometimes because it depends on your opponent, but Carlson currently sits at 31 wins. He just beat Billy by less than a point this past weekend in a pretty ugly week for him. The record for most wins in a season is 35, so he only needs 4 more to tie the record with 6 matchups to go. And then second place is myself with 34. I should say 35 with Bootsy. I don't want to leave out the current record holder. It's Bootsy in 2017, and then second place is myself with 34 wins from 2018. There's a few others in there with 32 and 31. But with 6 matchups left, Carlson's got 31 wins. He needs to go 5-1 to pass up Bootsy's record. He's most likely going to end the year with 3 wins over his miserable division mates. So really, week 13 is going to be the key to his record chase. He's got some tough matchups. He plays Smith, Ben, and myself. If he can go 2-1 this week, then he'll most likely break the record for all-time wins. Looking historically, I had 31 wins when I was entering my final 6 matchups, and stumbled to 3-3 down the stretch in 2018 to finish with 34. Bootsy actually only had 30 wins when he was entering week 13, but he finished 5-1 to set the all-time record. So Carlson looks like he's in pretty good shape, especially considering how well he's done this year, and his opponents left. He looks like he's in pretty good shape to set this record, but I do believe there should be a small asterisk on this part of the record, just because he happens to be in a division with 3 of the bottom 4 teams in the league, and he's feasted on them this year to the tune of 13 wins and 2 losses. In 2018, the year that I had 34 wins, the second most of all time, I had to contend with a 25-win team in my division in Oaks, and actually a 29-win team in my division in Carlson himself. When I set my record, so. Not to say that, you play who you play, obviously, and if anything, it's more of an indictment of our divisional alignment. But, from a win standpoint, he's in decent shape to set the record, but it's tainted slightly in this broadcaster's opinion. Secondly, and a little bit more pure from a record standpoint, is the most points scored of all time. The current record is myself with 5,975 points scored during that 2018 campaign. Second is Oaks with 5,789 points scored in 2018 as well. Note that year in 2018 we were in the same division, and then third place all time is Bootsy with 5,676. We have triple matchups, and so our points get multiplied by 3 for some reason. So I actually hold the top spot by 62 real world points. Second place Oaks had outscored Bootsy by just 37 points, so it's kind of a narrow margin between the top 3. With 2 weeks left right now, Carlson has 5,173 points to date, which means he's 167 total points behind third place. He's 205 total points behind second place, and he needs 267.4 points to set the all-time record. So that would mean over the last 2 weeks, he needs to average 133 plus points per week. I mean, he has been to date averaging 143 points a week, so I would say mathematically he's on pace to break the record, but he just had by far his worst week of the season, scoring just 91.7 last weekend. And he's going to be without Ronald Jones and Curtis Samuel, and don't forget his namesake, Mike Evans, this weekend. Also, Dalvin Cook and Kyler Murray are both kind of affected by injuries. Kyler especially. I don't know. You wonder maybe if this last weekend isn't kind of a harbinger of doom for Carlson's chances at the all-time points record. Similar to wins, it's really going to be decided this weekend, because if he can get over that 130 point threshold, that brings the points needed in the last week of the season, into a more realistic range. But, because of those late bye weeks, that 133 points this week might be a challenge. So, jury's still out on that one, but that'll really be the kind of more pure definition, in my estimation, as to his place in history. It's worth noting there is actually one record that John has already won. He might not even know about it, but he set the record for longest consecutive win streak with 18 wins in a row earlier in the season. So, and he shattered the previous record, which was 15, which was held by Oak. So I'm surprised, Carlson, you hadn't noticed that or brought that up to our attention, because it is pretty impressive. 18 wins in a row means, more than it's 6 straight weeks of going undefeated in our league. Lastly, Carlson has already won some cash this year, the cash that he's already been paid out, not the cash that he requested in advance, by claiming the weekly total high points winnings. He's won it 4 times through 12 weeks. The all-time single-season leader in weekly high points currently is a tie between Oaks with 5 wins in 2018 and Kraus with 5 wins in 2017. John is going to need to score the highest points in the league the next 2 consecutive weeks if he wants to hold this title alone. He also, just needs to go 1-1 if he wants a share of it. Side note, and this stuck out to me as I was tabulating these numbers, I discovered that Ariel has won weekly high points just once since 2016, which is insane and depressing. Ultimately, Carlson, he's having a fantastic season. You can't take it away from him. He's drafted well. He's made smart trades. He's capitalized on some smart waiver pickups. He's set good lineups. He's won his division by a mile. He's headed to the playoffs with a strong chance to win the title. So his place in history is still to be finally determined. It'll be mostly decided by this coming weekend. I believe that he is poised to earn a place in the top 3 Coolrophobics Anonymous teams of all time, but only a truly, really special Week 13 is going to earn him the prestige and respect of the top spot. So changing gears, let's welcome longtime listener, first-time caller Andrew Smith to the podcast. What's up? Welcome.
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, you got quite a studio there.
That's right. Yeah, I'm joined by some special guests. I think you might be the first non-Oaks guest to appear live on the podcast, so congratulations. So I don't know if you count the live podcast that we did from the hot tub at Marlin Stadium during a
it's quite an honor to be on.
Yeah. All right. Well, just a couple questions for you. Would love to hear your input, but
are we live right now? We're recording.
This is live, so it's going to go towards the mid part of the podcast. So some of the discussion has already occurred. I'm curious to hear from you how you think your season has gone.
I left the draft not feeling particularly good about my roster. So I was surprised when week 1 came around. I think I was projected to have the most points of any team in the league. So it kind of shows how much I knew about player evaluation. But all in all, it kind of seems like I've been able to use my keepers from last year. I've taken a draft approach of trying to get keepable players, so that you can build a solid roster cheaply. So I'm happy to be at the top of our division right now. Don't know what'll happen in the final 2 weeks. Oaks obviously is a very strong team, and I only have a 1-game lead on him, so it might come down to our head-to-head matchup in the final week of the season. But I've got a pretty decent lead in points on Ben, I think. So I'd like my chance of making the playoffs, but it's fantasy football. Anything can happen any given week.
Yeah, yeah, no question about it. Well, you're getting Austin Eckler back at the right time, which I think will be pretty big.
Yeah, it's actually, I know, I don't like to be the one to complain about injuries and stuff like that. I feel like it's kind of what everyone deals with, and it's the way fantasy football goes. But I missed Chris Carson and Austin Eckler for long stretches of the season. It looks like they're both coming back healthy. So, I'm happy that I was able to kind of weather the storm with the depth of my team.
Well, especially with them coming back. I mean, you're at running back and wide receiver, you're about as strong as anyone with Devontae Adams and A-Rob and Eckler and Carson and Gibson. I guess where I would view your weaknesses, and I'm curious if you're nervous at all, is quarterback. I mean,
well, I thought you were going to say tight end because it's been a black hole there. It's basically been like an empty roster spot for me most of the year.
We try not to get into a race on the podcast, by the way, if you could just walk that back a little bit.
What's that?
We try not to get into race on the podcast, if at all possible.
Oh,
I'm sure there's plenty
I apologize.
Tight ends available.
But I think the what I've got working in my favor is that everyone's tight end kind of sucks, except so.
Well, everyone except Oaks, who you're fighting for the division.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny. At the beginning of the season, I thought that quarterback would be a area of strength for my team. I felt pretty good about Goff having a bounce back fantasy year at least. He's actually been quite good on like occasions. He'll have weeks where he puts up big numbers. And he's had a few weeks where he's been in like the negative point territory for most of the game, like this past week. Ironically, Phil Rivers has kind of been a quietly like a top 12 or so quarterback from a fantasy perspective lately. So I don't know. I might be riding him, and then hopefully Lamar comes back healthy, and maybe he can return to at least some of what we saw last year.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so you talked a little bit about our division. What are you thinking for the other divisions? This is going after the power ranking, so I've laid it out here pretty clearly for everyone. But what are your expectations for the other divisions? And clown race is heating up. There's 3 contenders.
Well, so obviously there isn't really anything to talk about in Carlson's division. He's already got that one wrapped up, and the rest of the teams are in the clown discussion. And then I don't know. I guess Denenberg I think he has a slight lead over Ben and the other in that division. I don't have the standings in front of me, but I think that's how I recall. I don't know. I think Denenberg probably holds off Ben there, just based on their total points. It seems like Denenberg has the better team, but you never really know. They've probably. I think the last week it's all division matchups, so it could come down in their division. The luck of the draw with a 1 week performance. And then I don't know. Remind me who's looking at the Clown Bowl.
Dan is kind of running away with things the last couple of weeks, but it's basically going to be Dan, Billy, or Bootsy. Dan is essentially locked in. It'll be Billy and Bootsy for that last spot.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like regardless, we're going to have a new 2-time clown. Yeah, I don't know. I think I played Dan last week, I think, and his team just was
it's offensive. It's offensive to the eye.
He barely could field a full lineup. It seems like he's battled some injuries and also just some lack of talent on that roster. So I don't know.
Why?
It seems like Billy's team all season long has just been really really terrible. So I always kind of felt like it was his to lose, but I don't know. Fantasy football is funny like that. You can have the worst team and still kind of squeeze out some wins enough to keep yourself out of the Clown Bowl. And then, of course, when it comes to the Clown Bowl, there's a lot of luck that goes on there. It's just 1 week, see how many. If you have a good week, you can survive. If you have a bad week, you're the clown.
You can have a bad couple of weeks leading into it with those sweet frozen rosters that I know we're all so keen on.
Right.
All right. Well, hey, last question for you before I let you go. It's been an interesting season from a rules and a sort of league banter standpoint. You've stood out as somewhat of a bastion of sanity and reason in most cases. Although what I'm a little concerned about is your most recent interaction with the CBS support administrative team. I wasn't sure I was necessarily following all of what was transpiring there, but for those of us who maybe didn't page through the whole sordid affair, give us a breakdown and any updates. Let us know where we're at.
Well, I think CBS closed my case, and essentially, like I think everyone else in the league, I decided to stay home for Thanksgiving, and took a few days off of work. Found myself kind of twiddling my thumbs. Found myself maybe cracking open the whiskey a little earlier in the day than I normally would. I don't know. I had there was some we had some issues, I guess, with we've all season we've had a few issues with the site, and we keep talking about maybe finding a new platform for future seasons. But so I had the idea to reach out to them, and as I was doing it, I kind of crafted this elaborate made up story as I went along, and kind of tried to make it as bizarre as possible, and see if I could get any sort of reaction from the CBS people. It did appear that they were at least reading the dribble that I was producing, because they would respond with some reference to what I was asking them in most of their messages. But yeah, bottom line, it sounds like the things that we're experiencing are known bugs with the email and the waiver wire and things like that. And then I don't know, they passed along some of my other suggestions apparently to the appropriate channels. So who knows? Maybe we'll see some new functionality.
It seems like you brought some sunshine to an otherwise dreary day for a Pakistani teenager.
I question whether I was speaking to someone named Commish Robert or not, but
well, yeah, and that was what I had backwards there, because why would the tech support team identify themselves as a commissioner? What if you're the league commissioner and you're writing in for assistance? It seems very confusing. So, but appreciate you fighting the good fight. It's been a fun season. Good luck down the stretch, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, it was an honor to be on. I think there's a perception in the league that I'm antisocial. So what better way to address that than on a podcast from this room where I'm locked away all day long, currently writing some X query for a telehealth client. So glad to hop on.
Well, that's great. And I just like I keep telling people, it's not that Smith doesn't like anyone. It's just that he doesn't like this specific group of people that we have assembled. So, all right.
Yeah. Thanks again. Happy to be on. Can't wait to watch the rest of it.
Go Colts. All right. Thanks to Smith for joining the podcast. Now we'll wrap it up. Let's open up the old mailbag. First, why is John so obsessed with fines? Is he trying to collect interest and penalties from all that tea we destroyed 250 years ago? Does he fine his daughter when she cries too loud? From Andrew Denenberg. Thanks for the note, Denenberg. I had discussed John's fervor for fines a little bit previously, but you raise an interesting hypothesis. It could be that Carlson's rage stems from his understated British heritage. Fantasy football actually doesn't really exist over in the UK. They only play that weird salary cap Premiership fantasy salary cap model where any tosser can own Sadio Mane. So maybe, the system that we have in place for fantasy football here quietly enrages him. Your second point is really nothing to laugh at, frankly. As you should know from being a father, Michelle and I have instituted a fine system with Brooke where if she gets out of her bed at night, I take coins out of her piggy bank. And frankly, it's sad how effective it is. Second question, if you, Brad Bauer, had to spend an entire evening with one of the former league members, Rifkin, Deutsch, Little Deutsch, or Plotzker, who would you choose? The night consists of them coming over to your house, cocktails and discussion of current events, having a nice sit-down meal with Michelle, and playing with your children. From Andrew Oakes. It's a good question. Obviously, COVID safety protocols notwithstanding, to me, I think the answer here is obvious. It's Plotzker. If Rifkin comes over, he's going to need to bring his wife, and frankly, we don't have enough dry goods and storage to keep her satisfied. Deutsch and his brother are whack. They'd spend the whole time bickering amongst themselves, and they'd most likely quit halfway through the meal and leave. Being as this is kind of a one-night-only affair, I don't mind welcoming Wheelio McPlotzkevez back into my life for one night. He's nothing if not entertaining, and frankly, I think he'd bring over a bottle of the most adult beverage there is, wine. Well, that's it for the podcast. Good luck to all down the stretch. Good luck to Carlson as he embarks on an epic Week 13, and to the rest of us as we head towards the playoffs and the Clown Bowl. Maybe we're in for a little bit of history, or maybe this whole thing gets canceled in a week. Who knows? But thanks for tuning in. Best of luck.